Srimad, His Divine Grace. Hi, Charana, Ravinda Bhakti Shri Prabhupada ki, ISKCON, Bibi Divine Acharya, save the whole world, Shri Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitya Vishnu Pada, Hamza, Privra Jakacharya, Ashto, Tarashata Srimad, His Divine Grace, Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki, Namacharya, Shri Rasta Kuri ki, Brahmā Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu, Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana ki, Braj Vimishim Dam Dam ki, Navadvip Mayapur Dam ki, Purushtam Chatra Jagannath Puri Dam ki, Ganga Mai ki, Yamuna Mai ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulasi Maharani ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Go Premanandi, all glories, somebody's, all glories, somebody's, all glories, somebody's, all glories, all glories, Lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories for Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 This asana sort of slides on the floor. If I get excited, I might sort of start moving across the floor. Nana Karma Vitanena Nana Karma Vitanena Nana Karma Vitanena Praja Bhavi Sisrikshata Praja Bhavi Sisrikshata Praja Bhavi Sisrikshata Nana Karma Vitanena Praja Bhavi Sisrikshata Nana Natma Vasidati Asmin Te Natma Vasidat Yasmin Ste Natma Vasidat Yasmin Ste Vashiyan Mad Anugraha Vashiyan Mad Anugraha Vashiyan Mad Anugraha Natma Vasidat Yasmin Ste Vashiyan Mad Anugraha Nana Karma Vitanena Praja Bhavi Sisrikshata Natma Vasidat Yasmin Ste Vashiyan Madanugraha Nana Karma Vitanena Praja Bhavi Sisrikshata Natma Vasidat Yasmin Ste Vashiyan Madanugraha Nana Karma varieties of service Vitanena by expansion of Praja population Bhavi innumerable Sisrikshata desiring to increase Na,
never.
Atma, self.
Avasidati,
will be bereaved. Asmin, in the matter. Te, of you. Vashiyan, always increasing. Mat, my. Anugraha, causeless mercy. Translation. Since you have desired to increase the population innumerably and expand your varieties of service, you shall never be deprived in this matter, because my causeless mercy upon you will always increase for all time. Responsibly, please. Since you have desired to increase the population innumerably, and expand your varieties of service, you shall never be deprived in this matter, because my causeless mercy upon you will always increase for all time. It's pretty amazing that Krishna is telling Brahmā that my causeless mercy, he's received Krishna's mercy for one thing, and it's just going to increase for all time. It's just going to keep increasing and increasing and increasing. And you think, wow, he's so fortunate because he's getting that blessing. But actually, if we look at ourselves, we're in the same position. Because the fact that we're here is Krishna's causeless mercy upon us. Because all you have to do is just look at, I don't know about any of you, but I wasn't born in a Vaishnava family. I was born in a Malecha family. My parents were meat eaters, they took intoxication, etc., etc. All the sinful activities were very much present in our house. And so the fact that we're here is Krishna's causeless mercy, and the fact that we're able to stay here every single day is Krishna's causeless mercy upon us, and the mercy is constantly increasing. The more we surrender to the process, the more Krishna's mercy becomes manifest in our lives. And we see that, we learn more about the philosophy, we learn the Bhagavatam, our taste for chanting. It's a fact, because, the fact that we can chant Hare Krishna every single day, that's a sign that we're getting a taste. It's the sign that we have a taste for the process. We wake up in the morning, we attend the program, whatever it is we're doing in relation to bhakti, it's a sign that we're getting Krishna's causeless mercy, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do it. Because you look, how many million people are there in this country? I think there's 27 million people. How many devotees in this country? Not that many. I don't think it'd be a million. It might not even be 100,000 or not even 10,000. Maybe something like 10,000 or more, So it's a very small percentage. So because of their complete impiety, they're not eligible to receive Krishna's causeless mercy. But, I was talking about this yesterday, that verse, Brahmanda Brahmajikona Bhagavaji Guru Krishna Prasad, Kripa Poya Bhakti. You get the Kripa, you get the mercy, and then you come into contact with devotees, you come into contact with Guru, and through their mercy you get Krishna. So it's a cycle of mercy, and without the mercy, then you're not going to go anywhere in the process of bhakti. You're not even going to start the process of bhakti unless you get the mercy. So this is the point here that Krishna is saying right at the end, Madanugraha, mine, Nanugraha, causeless mercy. So Brahmā has received Krishna's causeless mercy. Because you look at it, he's been created, he's landed on the lotus, right? He's like sitting there in the middle of nothing, literally. There's no light, there's nothing. And he's just looking around, he's trying to find out what's going on here. Who am I? Where am I? What am I supposed to do? He's got no idea. And then, he performs austerities for 100 years. First off, he tries to find out the source. He goes down the lotus, and he's going down for, I think it says a millennium or something like that. And then he comes back on top of the lotus. He hears the vibration of sound, tapa, and he understood, okay, I need to perform austerity. So he sat on top of the lotus. He performed austerity for 100 years. And then he composed these very beautiful prayers to Krishna. And Krishna became pleased by the prayers. But the interesting thing is, and Krishna says this in later verses, that the fact that you could speak those prayers, it came from me. I gave you the mercy so you could speak the prayers. And we see so many examples like that in the philosophy. If you look at, for instance, Dhruva Maharaj, he was performing his meditation, standing on his tippy toes with his arms stretched out. And then he, when the Lord appeared, he became stunned and he couldn't speak. And then the Lord touched him with his conch, gave him the benediction, and then he composed these very, very eloquent prayers. So, even in that case, that we see that only by the mercy of the Lord was he able to speak such beautiful prayers. So the same thing is here for Lord Brahmā. Only by the mercy of the Lord was he able to speak such beautiful prayers. So, and this is like, I was listening to a lecture the other day. Bhagavatam was talking about this idea of understanding that, I have no good qualities. And it's only by Krishna's mercy I can do anything. What is that when we have that kind of disposition, that attitude? Humility. And Prabhupada points out in the 13th chapter of the Gita, without humility, he says humility is the key to knowledge. If you want to understand anything, you need to be humble. Because otherwise what happens, you think, I know everything. You can't tell me anything. I mean, like any 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old boy, right? Try and tell them something. Try to give them some guidance in life. You've got no chance. Why? Because they already know everything. There's nothing they don't know. And of course, we always come across exceptions, but this is the general kind of attitude. These young men think they know everything. But then they get a little bit older, and the body starts to, decay and stuff like that, and they start to realize, actually, I don't know much at all. And as we learn more and more, this is one thing that Socrates said. A sign of wisdom. The people, they say I'm a wise person, but actually I understand. I don't know anything. That's a sign of wisdom. You should realize I don't know very much at all. And if you look in, like Krishna's addressing when he starts to speak in verse 27, 8, something like that, maybe 30. He addresses him as the embodiment of Vedic wisdom. He's saying that Brahmā, he knows all Vedic wisdom. He's a very, very knowledgeable. And actually, we see when he was first created, I think it's described a little bit later in this canto, how when he looked around, then his four heads manifested, and as the four heads manifested, the Vedas manifested from each of these heads. The Sama, the Rig, Yajur, Natava, Veda, they all manifest. So this is all knowledge, and Veda. Prabhupada defines it as Veda means to know. So if there's anything to know, this is the Veda. So all knowledge is contained in the Veda, and Brahmā knows all knowledge. How much can we say we know? I mean, can anyone here quote every single verse in the Bhagavad Gita from memory? I know devotees who can. But, that's only one book, one small book. 700, 800 verses, I think 720 or 30 verses, something like that. Can anyone quote all of them? I can almost quote the whole 7th chapter. I'm getting close to it, but I can't even quote one chapter. And the 7th chapter is a fairly short one. But it's got some really powerful verses. But we see that Brahmā, he's the one who has all knowledge, but that knowledge he accepts. Because we'll go back in a minute and discuss these. But he accepts that if I don't get your mercy, I'm going to get into Maya here, because I'm in this position of becoming the creator. In the second, obviously we understand the second canto. We see it talks about the process of creation in the middle of the second canto, how Krishna creates everything. So this is the first, because the Bhagavatam has 10 topics, and so that I think Poshana is the first one. I don't remember these things very well. Shaga Vishaga, yeah, Poshana is protection, right? So there's Shaga, which means the first. You guys know so much more than I do. Maybe you should be sitting here giving class. But any Purana has 10 topics, and so and this is what makes it a Purana, is that it has these topics, and we see that in the Bhagavatam it talks about the creation, then the secondary creation. So in the second canto, Because like the first canto is kind of like the introduction. It's setting the scene, if you like. You see the first chapter in the Gita. It's setting the scene. There's like a second chapter. It's setting the scene. It's get everything right. For speaking the Bhagavatam. Because not until the second chapter that the second canto, the Bhagavatam actually starts to be presented. In the first chapter, it's just talking about the history of the Pandavas and all that sort of stuff going on, and then Narad Muni, Vyasadeva, etc., and then Sukadeva Goswami came. Disappearance of Bhishma, praise of Kunti, all these amazing sections there. But then finally it gets to the point where Sukadeva Goswami appears in the 19th chapter. And then Parikshit Maharaj is glorifying him. And then he asks him some questions. And then he answers the questions in the second canto. So we see like the second canto, it talks about this creation, the first creation, how Krishna creates all the universes, etc. And then we see here, we'll see the second creation starting because the navel comes, because like part of that creation is how Krishna, he expands himself into the Chatavyuha, Sankashan, Prajumna, Niruddha, Vasudeva, Sankashan, Prajumna, Niruddha, and then from Sankashan comes the second Chatavyuha. There's actually Narayana, Mahavishnu or something, I can't remember. Mahavishnu, the second, the Mahashankashan, then the second Chatavyuha comes, and then from that Garbhadakshay Vishnu comes, because we see that Karana-dakshay Vishnu, he creates all the universes, and he enters in all the universes as Garbhadakshay Vishnu. Each one of the, because the universes, it describes how they're just flowing out of his body. Just like, have you ever seen a bubble machine? Like sometimes festivals we have a bubble machine, the bubbles just come out. So you can just imagine unlimited millions of bubble machines, right? And just bubbles are just blowing out. So that's what the universes are like. They're just coming out of the Lord's body, and they gather together like little golden threads, and they sit down in the water of the causal ocean. And then he enters into each one of those as Garbhadakshay Vishnu. And then from this is like the cycle of creations just keep going on. So Garbhadakshay Vishnu is manifested sometime, not manifested sometime. But when he withdraws into when he's not manifest, then I don't know the exact detail of it because it's not kind of given in so much detail, but the living entities, the conglomerate living entities, enter into his body when the pralaya comes, when the universe winds up, and then the desire of the living entities is so potent. This is actually the point of the lotus stem, and that's what pierces through the navel of Garbhadakshay Vishnu. You can imagine how strong the desires of the living entity are to enjoy. They can pierce through that navel. Because just like, if you look at any plant when it grows, it has the point. The point's actually quite strong because it needs to pierce through the soil. So in the same way, the desire of the living entity has to be quite powerful to break through. And that's what causes this to come out and then grow. This is the desire of the jiva. And then Brahmā, he appears on the lotus, and then from his and he doesn't know anything. And then from that, he's able to, he meditates upon the Lord. He hears tapa, he performs austerities, and then the Lord reveals himself to Brahmā. He can see the ocean. He can see Garbhadakshay Vishnu. This gigantic form of the Lord, and he sees that, and then he starts to have realization, and he offers prayers to the Lord. And this prayer is quite interesting. Actually, the purport's quite short. I'll get to it in a second. So we see here that there's one word. There's quite a few interesting words here. He talks about Nana Karma Vitani. He wants to expand his varieties of service and of course his main service is as the Prajapati or the Prajapati Pati, because he's the father of all the Prajapatis. And Praja literally means one who's born. So this is in the second line. It says Prajabhavi Sikshata. So Praja literally means one who's born. Now we see the Prajapati is the lord of all the Prajas. He's the one who maintains. He's the one who cares. Lord doesn't mean Of course, in the modern sense, Lord just means I'm in charge, I'm the boss, and you do what I say. But in the Vedic sense, that's not what it's like at all, because the Vedic society gives us this notion or this culture of service. This is what Vedic society is all about. It's about service. It's about I wrote this down a few days ago. This, because we have Vedic culture, right? Vedic culture has many different manifestations, and one of the big aspects of the Vedic culture is this service. You'll see, like, you look at Yudhisthira Maharaj in his role, or Ramchandra, or any of the great personalities who took this role of, what was his name? Prithu. These great kings, great leaders. They didn't have this mood of like, I'm in charge, you do what I say, you're like my footstool, I walk all over you. They didn't have this mood at all. Their mood was how to serve, how to help the citizens prosper spiritually. And that's the main focus of Varnashram, is how to situate the living entity in such a way that they can evolve in their life to the point of developing their spiritual life, and how they can nurture their spiritual life. So we see in the Vedic concept, when we talk about praja, as I said, literally means one who was born. So that means every single living entity in the kingdom was born. So therefore, the Prajapati is the caretaker of every single living entity. And we also see the descriptions with these various Prajapatis, how they gave birth to human beings, how they gave birth to birds, how they gave birth to snakes, and all sorts of living entities. They all come from Prajapatis. And we see that, here with Brahmā, like as I was saying, he's the Prajapati Pati. He's the father of all the Prajapatis, who are the father of all the citizens. And he understood what this role meant, how it meant that he was going to be the controller, or the creator, if you like, the secondary creator of all these citizens, of all these living entities. And he was concerned that, well, this might go to my head, I might become a bit puffed up here because I'm going to be, because, you look at it, just like, for instance, if we're going to build a temple over here, right? Well, I'm not going to be here, but you guys are going to do it. You're going to build a temple over here, right? And you're going to see, like, all the materials will turn up, they'll land on the site, the concrete, the wood, the steel, the glass, the bricks, whatever it is you're using to build, the roofing, etc. There's going to be so many materials. Brahmā didn't have anything. He was just sitting on the lotus. So out of his body, he created everything. But he was able to do that by the mercy of Krishna. And that's one of the things that's really prominent in this pastime. How, by the mercy of Krishna, he was able to accomplish everything. Because, like, okay, this temple, right, working on plans right now, you're going through the plans, you're designing, okay, this is going to be here, this is going to be there. So then you have a plan. And then based on the plan, you'll give the plan to a quantity surveyor, and they'll figure out, okay, you need this many bricks, you need this many windows, you need this much concrete, you need this much paint, you need da-da-da. They'll give you a whole list of everything you need to buy, and so then you buy it, and it lands up on the site, and it gets delivered. And then the builders put it all together and you make a building. But with Brahmā, it wasn't like that at all. He was, it's that, what's that, it talks in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, his Sridaya Adi Kavaca, how he was inspired within the heart by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it all came from within. And so this is the understanding of empowerment, is when one becomes empowered, then you can, there's so much you can achieve. But I just want to go back to the verses, because you look at verse 22, because these are the essential, like the whole chapter up to verse 25 is Brahmā's prayers, from 21 to 25. Many beautiful prayers. He's talking about, I mentioned this yesterday, he's talking about the position of the jivas who don't take the Krishna consciousness, and he talks about the position of jivas who take the Krishna consciousness, then he glorifies Krishna. But then verses 22, 3, 4, 5, these are like the essential verses of this section, where he's actually praying to Krishna to basically empower me so I can do what I need to do. because he understands, he's got humility, he understands, without you, I have no capacity to do this. And this is an essential point for a devotee. We may have so many, we may be gifted with so many material abilities, we may be intelligent, we may have skills, we may have knowledge, whatever. May have great strength. But then, if you reflect on that, where does that come from? Materialist doesn't think that. He says, I'm in the gym, I'm pumping iron by my, taking protein, by my endeavor. But what does Krishna say in the Gita? Ishwaraham Maham Bhogi Siddhaham Balavam Sukhi, in I think it's the 17th chapter, where he talks about demoniac nature. The demons think, by my endeavor, by my prowess, I'm achieving this. But a devotee understands that actually, that what's that verse, the second last verse in the 10th chapter? Yad Yad Bhutyanat Satram Srimad. He says, Krishna says to Arjuna, you should know that all glorious, opulent, and whatever, wonderful things, they spring from but a spark of my, this word vibhuti is very important. This vibhuti means like an energy of Krishna. So they're all coming from Krishna's energy, by Krishna's empowerment. So the fact that we can do anything in this world, even the fact that we can breathe comes from Krishna. What about digestion? You can digest food. Where does that come from? Well, the scientists say, well, you've got these acids and this and that, but do they really understand how digestion works? It's a very complicated process. And then, like, when the digestion stops working, do they know how to fix it? Doesn't seem like it. I mean, I've been trying for years to fix my digestion. It all comes from Krishna. And he says, I'm the fire of digestion. I'm the light and the sun and the moon. We understand that the moon gives the vegetables taste. And the more pollution there is, the less the moon's light is able to get through. What we see, or they grow vegetables under lights. You ever smelt a flower that's grown under lights? No, you haven't, because there's no smell. They're just like completely, it's like paper flowers. And most flowers that are commercially grown are grown under lights now, because they just keep the lights on most of the day, so they can pump flowers out much faster. And many more flowers, but they have no smell, because they're not getting the light they need to produce the smell. And they need to get that light from the moon. So we see, like, in verse 22, that's the first one where Brahmā is asking the Lord for direct, he's directly asking, please, because this is the standard thing. It's like, it's like you look at any Mangala Chan in any book, so they start off by praying, to the personality, you are this, you are that, you're so wonderful, you're so great. Then you ask for a benediction, and then you finish off with some other glorification. Exactly what Brahmā did. This is a very standard Vedic process. You look in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the beginning of the Chaitanya-Charitamrita, all these books. Very standard process. Nectar of Devotion, or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the whole introduction. That's actually the first chapter of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And we see there that, he prays to the Lord and the associates and things like that. So in verse 22, Brahmā, he prays to be empowered. He understands, I can't do this on my own. I need your mercy to do that. Then in verse 23, he says, I only want to be engaged in your service. I don't want to be deviated. Because he's going to be interacting with material nature. He understands this, that I'm going to interact with material nature. Very, very powerful. And it can, because he's Tatastha. He's a Tatastha Jiva, so very easily he can be swayed one way or the other. Just like you or I. Very easily we can be swayed by material energy. Therefore, we need to be very careful. But Prabhupada makes this point for the grihastas, because they're dealing with the material energy all the time. Very easily it can become bewildered. Therefore, he says, for grihastas, deity worship is essential, because this will help to protect them. And this is a way of accessing the Lord's mercy. And he also, he prays, I don't want to be materially affected, and I don't want to think that I'm the creator. I want to overcome this tendency. It's just like, you work with computers, right? And you kind of, anyone who's worked with a computer, you kind of, you create a document or whatever like that, and it's really, wow, look what I've done. This is very much a male thing. I think it's more for men than for women, but it's very much a male thing, where when you do something, when you achieve something, you start to feel like, wow, I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer here. It's a subtle thing. But you have to be very, very careful to understand that the fact that the ability you have to be able to do that comes from Krishna. So whenever we're able to do something very nice, whenever we're able to create something wonderful, we need to give credit where credit's due. So it's not me. What capacity do I have? If it wasn't for Krishna, I wouldn't even be able to see the computer. My eyes wouldn't function, because Krishna gives us the ability to see. So, and the ability in their hands. And you can see so many people in this world who've lost all those abilities. They become, cripples. They can't type, they can't see, they can't whatever, because the ability's been withdrawn. So, whenever we're creating things or whenever we're doing anything like that, we need to see that this has come about by Krishna's mercy. And this is what Brahmā is praying for. And then he also goes on to pray in verse 24 that in the course of performing material activities that I don't be deviated from my sadhana. In this case, it's chanting Vedic hymns, but the same for us, because sometimes in devotional service there's so many activities to do, but we should never forget hearing and chanting. There's a few really nice lectures that Prabhupada gave in India where he talks about, in relation to deity worship, he's talking about the notion of Sri Vigraha becoming Galagraha. And Galagraha means like a stone around the neck. And like if you go into the water, you've got a stone around your neck, you're going to sink. Or like the mafia, they have these things where they give you lead slippers or concrete slippers. You know what that means? They put someone in a tub and they pour concrete in. And when the concrete sets, they drop you in the river. They put your feet in the tub and you've got these concrete blocks around the feet, they just drop you in the river. You've got no chance of getting out. You can't break the concrete, so you just drown. And so anyhow, there's a lecture Prabhupada gave in Mayapur in 1974, I believe. And in this lecture, he as he was talking on some different topic. And some devotees got up to go and do some service. And Prabhupada was very concerned about that. He said, where are they going? Some other business? Ugrakama. And Ugrakama, if you know what Ugrakama means, it means horrible activities meant to destroy the world. So him to say, and that's what he referred to nuclear weapons and stuff as Ugrakama. And so Prabhupada said, Ugrakama. And then he went on to explain, he says, if we don't have this life of hearing and chanting, then these big buildings will become, this Takabari means a home for the deities, will become a home for the pigeons and doves. And you will simply think, and he's talked a bit about deity worship, and he said, you will simply think this old man has given us a burden. So Prabhupada was stressing it, and we see here, Lord Brahmā's praying, don't let that happen, that I have, I get too caught up in the service and I give up my sadhana. Because his sadhana is, hearing chanting Vedic mantras. So Prabhupada was making the same point. If we don't focus on sadhana, if we don't focus on having this life of hearing and chanting, then everything will just become a burden, ultimately. You may do a lot of service, but in the end, it will become a burden. And you'll just think, what's the point? It's all useless. Because, the realization that this is Sri Sri Vanitai directly, the realization that, all the activities I do are connected to the Lord, all everything I have comes from the Lord. This only comes about through the process of hearing and chanting. So if we're not dedicating our lives to hearing and chanting, then the whole thing just becomes a burden. And we'll lose the empowerment we've received from the process. And you see, you just look through the history of ISKCON, the history of Bhakti, just over thousands and thousands of years. There have been persons who have achieved so many things in Krishna consciousness, but when they give up their hearing and chanting, when they give up their sadhana, Puna Musika Baba. You know this phrase? They become a mouse again. You go back to what they were. And there was one time Prabhupada was on a morning walk in Denver, and devotees were asking Prabhupada if they could sell jewelry. They wanted to sell jewelry to maintain the temple, to make money and stuff like that. And Prabhupada said, Puna Musaka Baba, again become a jeweler. We're not interested in business like that, especially not, in the ashram stuff. No, our business is to spread Krishna consciousness, not to sell jewelry or to sell whatever. That's not our business. Our business is to spread Krishna consciousness. And that is done by hearing and chanting, because you meet someone on the street, you want to distribute books. What do? You speak to them, and they hear. And what do you tell them about? You don't tell them about some mundane topic. You talk to them about Krishna. You talk about the content of the book. So, Brahmā, he's praying for that same position, and then the last verse he prays that he'll smilingly bestow his mercy upon him. It's a very nice prayer. So Sarvabhadra Guru Bhagavatam. I used to chant it every single morning. But anyhow, he's praying for the Lord, to please bestow your munificent smile upon me. And this is the right attitude to take. We see what Lord Brahmā is doing. This is the right attitude to take. This is the ideal attitude for a devotee to have. And we see this verse is giving us the result of that attitude, is that he says, you'll never be deprived in this matter, because my causeless mercy upon you will always increase for all time. Not just this week, next week, whatever, for all time. As long as you exist, which is eternal, that my mercy will be upon you, because he's so pleased with his attitude. And, this service attitude is a big part of success. If we have the right service attitude, then we're well on the path to success in Krishna consciousness. But if we have the wrong service attitude, then we're going to struggle. And we see here that Brahmā, he's giving this perfect example of the right service attitude, because he's understanding that only if you empower me, I can do this task. Prabhupada, you look at those prayers, he's marking Bhagavatam. When Prabhupada was in the harbour in Boston, those prayers were exactly in this mood. I don't know why you've brought me here to this horrible place. Prabhupada was just looking around, looking left, looking right. He said, what a place, Very horrible place, But he's saying, but obviously you have some purpose in bringing me here, because otherwise you wouldn't have brought me here. But, he says, but I can only do this by your mercy. And he paraphrased that verse, Ekadasha Krishna Asati Brita, that, you make all other living entities dance, so please, you make me dance as you desire. Prabhupada was praying to Krishna. So Brahmā is doing the same thing. Prabhupada did the same thing. Make me dance. Just let me become your instrument. And this is how we become successful. That's what Brahmā is asking for. Let me become your instrument. And we see Prabhupada did that. And if we want to be successful in devotional service, we need to do the same thing. We need to put ourselves in that position of just let me become your instrument. Because we see so many examples of great personalities, who didn't take that position. Now, there's one very prominent example will be coming up. It's either the next canto or the one after, of Daksha. When Daksha, Prajapati Daksha. And, to get into the position of being a Prajapati is not it's a small thing. It means, he had great piety. He performed great activities in a previous life, obviously, to get into that position of being a Prajapati, because in order to have such power, you have to have done you have to have some pious credit. And this is why we see, even like Prabhupada, he said about the Queen of England. She says she's a very pious lady. Obviously, to get in such a position, there must have been some piety, to wind up being the president of a country, the prime minister of the country. Obviously, in a past life, there must have been some piety. Otherwise, why would they get that position? It's not just, that unqualified, obviously they are unqualified, but they must have some level of qualification to wind up in that position. And then, so, you look at Daksha, we see that he became very proud, and he thought himself greater than Lord Shiva. And as a result of that pride, his daughter died. His daughter committed suicide. The sati, right? And then he actually lost his head, literally. Even though he lost his head due to pride, he lost his head. His head was cut off by Virabhadra. They put him on the sacrificial altar. It was meant to go off with his head with a wooden chopper. And then I think it was Brahmā came and said, "Oh, this is really bad. He's one of the Prajapatis. You can't do things like that." And so Lord Shiva said, okay, I'll give him my head back. But because what happened was Virabhadra chopped off his head and threw it in the fire. So that head was gone. You know, it was such a casual kind of thing. You chop it off, throw it in the fire. You know how to deal with that. And then so Lord Shiva put a goat's head on him. So isn't that like, you know, like an ultimate sort of reflection of karma? The guy's a goat, you know. He's got a, you know, it's like sometimes you're such a goat, you know, because goats, you know, they're kind of, what do goats do? I mean, I remember living with years ago. We had, you know, when I was living out in the country, we had a goat, and goats are like really disgusting creatures. You know, I mean, if you have, especially male goats, they're really dirty creatures. You know, the only thing they think about all day long is sex life. And anyway, I won't describe it as a mixed audience. You know, it's very, very disgusting. Some of the things they do, but you know, and so, you know, as a result of his pride, as a result of his arrogance, his daughter committed suicide, and he wound up with the head of a goat. So here he is in the Vedic sacrifice. You know, like because the sacrifice went on because he had to create progeny, and he's there with his chanting mantras and stuff, and he's got the head of a goat. I mean, I don't know, I'd be really embarrassed. I don't know how he dealt with it, but I'd be really embarrassed. You know? But, you know, and that's become because of his pride, because he didn't take up this proper attitude of service, this proper attitude of humility. And so therefore, he wound up in the position. So he didn't get Krishna's mercy, not the same way as Brahmā did. But Brahmā, because of his you know, super excellent server attitude, you know, then he became empowered by Lord Krishna, and also because of his austerity. And the same is there for us. By performing austerities, we can get empowered by Krishna. So, you know, it doesn't mean we've got to sit in meditation for 100 years or 1,000 years or whatever. No, just by performing your service, by following regular principles, by rising early, by chanting japa. That's austerity. You know, just to do these things in Kali Yuga is a great austerity. To rise early in the morning, to be clean in this age is such an austerity, but it's essential. You know, Prabhupada, he makes the point that in the Gita that cleanliness is essential for spiritual advancement. Notice he uses the word essential. Not mean it's a nice thing or something like that. It's essential. So it means if you're not clean, you're not going to make spiritual advancement. But if you are clean, Prabhupada declares in the ninth canto of the Bhagavatam, he says, by cleanliness, one day you'll be able to see the Supreme Personality of God face to face. Just by cleanliness. But in Kali Yuga, it's such an austerity to be clean. I know, wherever I go, when I travel, I see the biggest challenge people have is cleanliness, because it's really austere. But it just takes time, just takes effort, you can be clean. And so very, very important. Now, there's a few, how much time do we have? Huh?
Today's holiday.
Oh, today, holiday. Krishna's so kind to give us these holidays. We can discuss philosophy. I just want to talk a little bit about the different types of forms and empowerment. The whole, because this verse is very much about empowerment. So this section of the Bhagavatam is very much about empowerment. So I just wanted to discuss on that briefly. In the Madhya Lila chapter 20, verse 1, this section is describing the different, talks about Swayam Rupa, Tarakatma Rupa, Avesh Rupa, and things like that. This has also been, this chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I think a few chapters after, has become the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And you'll see Prabhupada describes it in a lot of detail there also. But in Madhya Lila, chapter 20, it's talking about the different forms of the Lord. And in verse 165, it's describing the Supreme Personality of God exists in three principal forms: Swayam Rupa, Tadekatma Rupa, and Avesh Rupa. And this is described in detail in Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatam. Very, very nice. So the Swayam Rupa means Krishna's original form. And the Tadekatma Rupa, and I'll probably get this wrong, because I've read it, I've made notes, but I just don't remember things. I'm really bad like this. You know? It's like I can write it down 1,000 times and read it 1,000 times. It's like, oh, I don't have Krishna's mercy like that. But Tadeka is, I'd have to, just give me a second, I'll find it. Where did I note this down? Sorry. Oh, there it is, that one there. Hare Krishna. Yeah. I really like listening to classes of some of these senior Vaishnavas where they just like rattle off all these things, like, just from memory. I went to Ramai Maharaj. He gave this class the other day on Ramachandra's appearance day. And just the detail he was going into with the pastimes of the Lord was just fantastic, It was just like, all from memory. And I was like, wow, how do you do that? I guess he must have had a very pious life to be able to do that. But I can say clearly, I had a very impious life. And it's only Krishna's divine mercy that I've got to this point. Okay, so Tadeka forms, they exist simultaneously with the Swayamrupa, but they're non-different. But some of the bodily features in the appear to be different, and specific activities are different. So they're very, very similar, and they're divided into two categories: Swangsa and Vilas. So the Swangsa means like own form, or Ansa means like a limb, but their own limb, and the Vilas is like the pastime forms. So the different pastime forms of the Lord, you can see these are Vilas forms. Yeah. So anyhow, I just wanted to discuss a little bit about the point I was going to look at here was these are Vaish forms of the Lord, because there's this one verse in the, where is it? I had it down here. So, that's right, I put it down lower. Kali Kala. That's that verse, Krishna Shakti Vinanaya. Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vinanaya Tada Prabhu. This verse is really, really nice, and Prabhupada quotes it quite a lot. And the verse is basically saying Kali Kalera Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtan. That the religious duty for this age is Krishna Nama Sankirtan. But then he says Krishna Shakti Vinanaya Tahe Prabhu. But this idea of pravaratam, to propagate. In order to propagate the Lord's holy name, Krishna Shakti, you have to receive a Shakti from Krishna. It's not anyone who can do that. So the Aveshrup or the Shaktavesh, they have two different forms. One is one's the Shakti and one's the what is it? I'm probably getting these words wrong because, as I said, I have a terrible memory. I remember the concepts, but trying to put the words together sometimes doesn't work so well for me. But there's you have the Vibhuti and you have the Shakti. I think it works. Anyhow, I won't try it, but I'll just make a mess of it. Yeah. And somewhere I was reading where it's explained how there's two manifestations. One of them is like the Vibhuti, which means like you get a blessing you're empowered with a specific potency of the Lord. And the other one, like the Aveshrupa, means these are actually they're literally incarnations of various types, but they sometimes we hear this this concept kind of bandied around a bit in ISKCON, certain personalities are Shaktavesh, like so-and-so is a Shaktavesh incarnation of this activity or that activity. But my understanding of Shaktavesh is that they're actually what they call they're predetermined. It's not like anyone can be. This is my understanding. It could be from reading Bhagavatam, etc. It's not that anyone can become a Shaktavesh. It's not like it's an ordinary thing. But he's saying here, Krishna Shakti Vinanahe Tada Pravatana. Only by getting this Shakti from Krishna, this Vibhuti or whatever, this energy from Krishna, can you actually do something like propagate Krishna consciousness. So we see, like with someone like Lord Brahmā, Krishna Shakti Vinanahi. How did he achieve what he achieved? Because he was empowered by Krishna to do that. You look at Srila Prabhupada. How did he achieve what he achieved? I mean, you look at, just take a moment to reflect on Srila Prabhupada's, pastime, where, he left India, right, with a trunk of books, 2 trunks, I think it was he had, 2 trunks on the Jaladuta. He traveled to America. And actually, it's described that the captain of the ship described that actually this was a very, very smooth sailing, because usually it was very, very rough. And so it was very smooth. But nonetheless, Prabhupada had a stroke on the way, or a heart attack. Different interpretations of that. Had a heart attack or a stroke on the way. And so he almost died. But still, he didn't give up his determination to carry out the order of his spiritual master. And he traveled to America. And when he arrives there, he gets to Boston Harbor, and he's looking around and says, what is this place? He's got no idea what Krishna's plan is. And then, he went from Boston, he went to New York, and then he went to Butler, Pennsylvania. He spent some time there with the Agarwals, and then he moved to New York. Right? He stayed in was it Carl Jurgens? Carl someone. He stayed with this guy who was a little bit nutty. And then so he left that place when the guy had like some sort of schizophrenic episode, and he left that place, and then he was lost. He didn't know where to go. And then Mukunda Maharaj found 26 Second Avenue, and they got the money together for the rent. And he didn't have any money to pay rent. He had nothing, but he had faith in the holy name. And so, he established, 26 Second Avenue, which very interesting, was called Matchless Gifts. And the fact is that Prabhupada was giving the most matchless gift. Who could match what Prabhupada was giving? He was giving eternal life to whoever was interested. And so the point is he had nothing but faith. He had faith in the instruction of his spiritual master. He had faith in Krishna, and he had just unshakable faith in the holy name. And everything was established on that. And then you look around ISKCON now, what we've got now, and it's all coming from that. It's all coming from Prabhupada's faith, from Prabhupada's faith in Krishna, faith in the holy name, faith in the spiritual master, and the fact that he was empowered by Krishna. Because he accepted, I have no capacity whatsoever to spread this mission. If it's going to happen, you have to do it. And this is exactly what happened, because he had that faith. So in the same way, whatever service we have in Krishna consciousness, if we can develop this service attitude, just as we see with Lord Brahmā, we'll become empowered. This whole idea of becoming, an empowered, this Krishna Shakti Vinanahi, Tara Prabhatar, we can propagate Krishna consciousness if we receive this mercy from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in whatever way it is you're propagating, like some people are propagating Krishna consciousness through book distribution, some devotees through prasad distribution, or Nam Sankirtan, or teaching, online seminars, whatever. But the only way you'll be successful in that is if you actually get Krishna's mercy. And the way to get Krishna's mercy is demonstrated here by Lord Brahmā. It's a very simple process, but we need to be able to do that. And through sacrifice and austerity, that's how we become qualified. And we see that's what Lord Brahmā did. You look in the previous chapter, it describes his sacrifice and his austerity. For so many, I think it was 100 years he was performing austerities, sitting on the lotus meditating. And obviously that's not our austerity in this age, because it's not the process of this age. Our austerity, our sacrifice, is to follow the instruction of the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, as given by Srila Prabhupada, the 4 regular principles, chanting 16 rounds, and also, like, you look in the Gita, it talks about, the most natural nature. It talks about different types of austerities. Austerity of speech means, we speak nicely, and, it gives us some good guidance on austerities we need to follow. But by practicing these austerities, making sacrifice on Krishna's behalf, then we become eligible candidates for empowerment, and then we're able to, when we get empowered, we're able to achieve so much in Krishna's service. But without that empowerment, what do we achieve? Okay, it's a very interesting topic, so I'll end there. Any questions at all?
Thank you very much, Prabhu. It was a very nice class. You were mentioning about the 3 different forms of rupas of Krishna, Swayam Rupa. Please, there was some throw light on this Ekatma Rupa and Avesh.
So Swayam Rupa, that's Krishna. That's the original form. And then he expands himself in so many different ways to achieve different tasks. I have to go back to the Laghu Bhagavatam to get this right. But my understanding of Tadekatma Rupa is things like, the different, the sangsas can mean things like, maybe even Balaram fits into that category. Don't quote me. Yeah?
Should I read out from the Laghu Bhagavatam?
You can if you like, yeah.
Yeah. So it says, that form which is non-different from the Swayam Rupa but appears to be different because of differing shapes and activities is called the Tad Ekatma Rupa.
So that means Balaram fits in that category because he's got a different colour, he wears a different dhoti.
Yeah. That Tad Ekatma Rupa has got 2 forms, Vilasa and Swamsa. That form which is different from the original form for performing different pastimes and which is slightly less in qualities is called the Vilasa form. And so the example is given as Narayana. Yeah. Just as the Lord of the spiritual sky, Narayana is the Vilasa form of Govinda, so Vasudeva is the Vilasa form of the Lord of the spiritual sky.
So you'll also see, you look at the Chatavyuha, the Chatavyuha, they're also Tadekatma Rupa forms. And the different pastime forms, the Vilas forms, they're also Tadekatma forms because they have, they're plenary incarnations of the Lord, but there's some difference there. They don't look exactly the same. They don't act. Like some of the forms, like Krishna may manifest it, in particular pastime. Like maybe you look at Varaha, it's directly Krishna who's manifested a different form, so he can perform particular activity. It means he can go down the bottom of the ocean, the Garbhodak ocean, pick up the earth and things like that. So he's still Swayam Bhagavan. He's a plenary form of Krishna, and he has the same potency. And you'll see, like with all the plenary forms of the Lord, they have the same potency as Krishna. They just don't manifest it. They only manifest what's required for that pastime. But if in performing that pastime something else is required, then they have no problem manifesting it. But Krishna, he's the original, from which all, and this Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sabhakara, everything comes from Krishna. And all incarnations are contained within Krishna. And we see sometimes when the Lord performs pastimes, like Lord Chaitanya, and the different leelas, and he was manifesting so many different forms at different times. But these are only just 3. These are 3 prominent forms, and then you'll see the Laghu Bhagavatam goes on. I think this is in the first chapter of the Laghu Bhagavatam. These are described. It mentions here. Where is it?
This is the first chapter.
Yeah, Purva 18, first chapter. Then in the second chapter, third chapter, in the 5th chapter goes into a lot of detail about Krishna. The second chapter talks about
the second chapter talks about the Purusha avatars.
Purusha avatars and also Lila avatars.
Third is the Lila avatars.
Third chapter is Lila avatars and different things like that. So it goes into a lot of detail, and Rupa Goswami is giving, like of course, as I mentioned, it's all described here in the Madhya Lila chapter 20. But the Laghu Bhagavatam goes into it in more detail. And Prabhupada does quote a lot from the Laghu Bhagavatam there. But if you really want to get into the detail of it, you can read the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, or you can read the Bhagavatam, which is a lot of interesting information. There's two translations of Bhagavatam. There's Gopi Pranadhana's and there's also Banaswami's. And both of them are quoting Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary. So you're getting a lot of really good information there. But with Banaswami's, it's directly Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary, whereas with the one that Gopi Pranadhana has translated, it's kind of like he's weaving the commentary in there a bit. So it's kind of the same thing, a little bit different, but.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the nice class, especially going back to Brahma's praise. You mentioned during the course of the lecture that right attitude and wrong attitude in service. So, what is like wrong attitude? Service for Krishna is service for Krishna. Is it the attitude where we don't pray for empowerment, where we are thinking too much about ourselves? Is that the wrong attitude?
Yeah. I mean, really what it gets down to is like, you could be doing service for Krishna and still have the wrong attitude. Because that's just about the externals. But, if you have the right attitude, it would mean like, I'm doing this for Krishna, whereas the wrong attitude means, I'm so, like addressing the deities, for instance, like sometimes you might come across where devotees addressing the deities because they want people to make comments about how nicely they address the deities. Or someone's giving class, they love giving class because they want everyone to tell them they're a pundit. It just strokes their false ego. But that's not the reason. We're giving class to try to, there's a lot of reasons we're giving class, but one is to share our realizations on the philosophy, but also to try to, go deeper into the teachings of the Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, the Bhagavatam, etc., to try to deepen our understanding. It's got nothing to do with me. And if I sit here and think that I'm a pundit or anything like that, then I'm just a fool. Because I'm doing everything opposite from what I need to be doing. Therefore, I've got to be a fool. So if we're doing devotional service in any way to kind of promote ourselves or whatever like that, then that's the wrong attitude, and that's not helpful at all. But if we're doing it for the pleasure of the devotees, for the pleasure of Krishna, but even like the idea of pleasure of devotees, like okay, you're cooking the offering, right? And my friends like to eat this, and my friends like to eat that, so I'm going to cook this for the devotees. But actually, we want them to like me. So it's all about you again. But the whole idea of cooking the offering is I'm cooking it for Krishna's pleasure. And that can manifest in different ways. I.e., we may be cooking for Krishna's pleasure means cooking, the traditional preparations that Srila Prabhupada told us to cook. Or if the temple authorities say, okay, because this offering is for, distributing to the devotees as well, therefore we need to have kitri and this thing. You know what I mean? It's like, because we're following authority, it's connected to Krishna. Yeah, but if we're making up my friends like to have pizza, so I'm going to cook pizza for breakfast. And then all my friends will be happy with me. That's focused on you. It's what they call extended sense gratification. Even though you may not eat the pizza, but you get gratification because your friends, you're such a nice devotee, you're such a nice cook, blah, blah, blah. That's not what it's about. Of course, if Krishna turns around and says, like he's saying Brahmā here, like, you're awesome. If Krishna says that, that's fine. But not that we're doing it to sort of, try and please other people's senses and please our own senses or whatever. Either subtle or gross. It can manifest in many different ways. I just remembered, I didn't read the purport. It's not very long. A pure devotee of the Lord, being cognizant of the facts of a particular time, object, and circumstance, always desires to expand the number of devotees of the Lord in various ways. So this is the focus. Where somehow or other, how do we propagate Krishna consciousness? Because you look out in this city here, are people enjoying? Are they having a good time? They think they are. But, about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock this afternoon, just go to any pub, especially in the city, right? And you tell me if they're enjoying it or not. They're falling flat on their faces, rotten drunk, I remember one time I was in a pub. I wasn't there drinking, I was working for I was working for a devotee band, right? As when Gandharvaka would had a band, and we're doing this gig at a pub in Newtown, a really degraded place. And this guy was like really, really drunk, and he was walking around with a glass, and he fell onto the glass into his eye. And then they think they're having a good time.
Yes, Krishna Prabhu.
What? Not finished. 1 minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished. You can have a turn in a minute. So they're always desiring to. Such expansions of transcendental service may appear to be material to the materialist. And if you look at the activities of great devotees, they do look like Prabhupada was traveling all over the world. But he had a different intention. So for the materialistic person, it looks like it's the same thing. But factually, they are expansions of the causeless mercy of the Lord towards the devotee. See how Prabhupada's interpreting that? It's just brilliant. You may be doing, the pure devotee may be doing so many activities, but these are an expansion of Krishna's causeless mercy because Krishna's Shakti is invested in that person. So he's doing these activities as a manifestation of Krishna's causeless mercy. I think this is a really amazing point that Prabhupada's making here. Plans for such activities may appear to be material activities, just like you building a temple here. It may appear to be a material activity, but it's not, because it's for the glorification of Krishna. So I encourage you all to vigorously get behind this project and expand it amongst the congregation. Get everyone into it, because this is going to be a phenomenal step forward for this yatra, is if you can get this temple built and use it as a means to propagate Krishna consciousness in Brisbane and beyond. It'll really, take off and be a very beautiful temple if you can all get into it. Plans for such activities may appear to be material activities, but they are different in potency. It's not material potency, it's spiritual potency. And the temple is actually understood to be an expansion of
The spiritual
Lord Balaram. Because he's the supreme personality of servant of Godhead. So whenever there's some service manifestation, like some paraphernalia for serving, we understand that's an expansion of Balaram. Like all the things we're using to serve the deities, we understand that to be an expansion of Balaram. But they are different potency, being engaged in the satisfaction of the transcendental sense of the Supreme. So because they're connected with Krishna, they're no longer material, but they become transcendental. So our business as devotees of Krishna is to take everything and connect it with Krishna. And that includes all the other living entities. Connect them with Krishna, and then their lives become perfect. They become peaceful, they become happy. Okay.
Hare Krishna, do I get a chance to say something, Maharaj?
I finished. He wants to give class.
Can I say something? Well, Hare Krishna, can I say something, Prabhu?
Please.
I just wanted to tell my realizations. In our families, we have converted a cinema house into a temple in Fiji. And then Shankar Das Adhikari came into our family, and then after that Vishnu Priya came into our family. And there are so many other Brismaka Devidasi, and then Prabhu's disciple. These are all mercies, really, when we look at it. And then Vishnu Tattva Das was another one. And then the mercies which we are receiving over here, we have daily Bhagavatam class association of Vaishnava devotees through Zoom, listening to Srimad Bhagavatam classes, deity worship. From you, we are learning all that. Reading the Vaishnava songbook, reading of Vaishnava songbook, summary of devotional process, reading of Prabhu's books, Mangalarti, 16 rounds of chanting Mahamantra, which is a tapasya in ourselves, in itself, really. You yourself talking to us about Krishna, Lord Krishna, guiding us in the deity worship, which is all pleasing to Lord Krishna. All these engagements of Krishna conscious activities are mercies of Prabhu have showered upon us. The Zoom classes which we have in the COVID season, so that is a beautiful day. Thank you very much for giving us, enlightening us through Bhagavatam today as well. My Dandavat Pranam to all the Vaishnavas who are listening. Thank you very much, Nrsimha Kavaca, Prabhu. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, anything else? Prasad ki jai. Okay. Thank you very much for Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Sama Vekta Bhakta Vrinda ki Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Nitya Gopremanandi.
Jai.